He's doing a good job here. He's got his hands locked.
An 11-2 major decision for Isaac Roble and the Boilermakers.
What a win for Hayden Filipovic to get the job done. He put Andrews on his back a couple of times.
Grayson Clark scores the final 8 points to take a 9-4 victory.
Beautiful job by Blaze. You saw him kind of drag him back with his head stuck in the middle.
Boilermaker faithful here in Holloway Gym, giving Ben Benadia a round of applause. He picks up his 4th Big Ten dual victory.
And he gets the takedown. Brody Bowman.
Welcome to the Always Aggressive podcast. I'm your host, Tanner Lipsett. With me, as always, the head coach, Tony Ersland, our producer, Corey Palm. How's everybody doing today?
Doing well, man. 50 degrees, sun's out, snow's melting and going away. It is awesome. Feels like spring.
It's getting there, and I saw we're supposed to be in the 50s this weekend.
Love it.
Yeah.
Get all that snow out of here.
It's a tropical heat wave.
Yes, it is.
So, Coach, coming off a tough weekend. Obviously, you're always looking to build, always looking to find some positives. So we'll try and do that as we work through the Illinois match. I think before we get into that at all, quick shout out to the Browns and the Welches. Had our annual team friendly before the duel, Hammer Down Academy here in West Lafayette, run by alums Logan and Stephanie Brown. The twins, Chad and Doug Welch, came up from Zionsville, brought all their kids, and put together a nice little event for them.
Yeah, no, it's a great event. A lot of kids, I heard they did really divide the mat up just to get through all the matches in time before the duel. I know they had a nice picture that I got to catch up, especially with Stephanie, and got to see that after they were done as well. So, but now it's a fun event, great event. You like to see, former Purdue alums really kind of growing the sport in their way with these young kids.
And huge, we talked about this is the 3rd year in a row we've done it. It's gotten bigger every year. This year they had to divide the mat into thirds to be able to get all the matches in, and a bigger group from each team coming up every year. But just a cool experience for young kids to be able to come out on a Division I college mat in our competition venue, and they get to roll around and scrap a little.
Yeah, no, a lot of fun. And like I said, you're always interested in ways to grow the sport and expose the sport to young people. They are definitely doing that and doing it the right way too, right? I mean, you like to see kids kind of being mentored and coached by people that have a great foundation and a good kind of philosophical view of what the sport should be for young kids at that age.
Right. And so huge thanks to them. Almost everyone stuck around despite the fact that it was Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
And managed to create a great environment for the duel. So thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys coming out again. And, we'll get ready to do it again next year. Getting into the duel, not our best showing. But, let's touch on some of the bright spots. And so we'll start at 141 pounds. Grayson Clark, continues to build. After being out of the lineup for a little while, he's won 4 in a row now and is looking pretty good doing it.
Yeah, he's putting up more points in his matches, right? Yeah, you kind of, for those people who are more statistical when you follow the sport, there's stats out there. You score 8, 9, 10 points, and the percentages of, as far as winning the match go through the roof, right? And so, you're always, especially with these 3-point takedowns, you're trying to find, if you can get to that 9, 10-point line, your ability to win the match, almost non-existent to lose. And so the fact that he's putting up those kinds of points in his matches is great to see. Early in the year when maybe he wasn't putting up the same point value, his offense wasn't quite there, that's when he was kind of, in those tight matches and it could go either way. So I'm very happy that he's continued to put up points. Not as only winning, that's a byproduct of points, so I guess, he's finding those 9, 10 points.
A huge way to get there, obviously, is to get on top and do your thing there, which Grayson was a little slow on earlier in the season and is now starting to pick up his top game again and roll guys up a little bit.
Yeah, and his top game, like you mentioned, it's really come on, and that is awesome to see because that's just a staple of his, kind of his style. I think he's just got to keep trusting that hand fight more. We see it in spots where it's really good and it's strong. We want him to just keep, so I want to see that for 7 minutes as well.
Signature matchup of the day was at 165 pounds. Our guy Joey Blaze, undefeated on the year, going up against his highest ranked opponent of the season in number 6, number 8, somewhere around there?
Somewhere in there. I haven't even seen him 7 in one poll. So you're right. You're around it. He's 6 through 8 somewhere.
Braden Scholes is having a great year for Illinois.
Yep.
And Joey went out, took care of business, and got the W.
Yeah, and I would even say Joey, he found a way to win, which, right, there's value in that. I think even Joey would tell you he was a little too cautious. He would like to see himself open up. That was kind of what our conversation in terms of the evaluation of the match and how he competed. So he came out strong, put a lot of pressure on him, got the stall call early,
Yep.
and never was the match wasn't ever in doubt. He kind of controlled throughout, but again, you want to do what you're capable of. As a student, right? Think of if you're capable of getting the A, get the A. Don't slack off and take the C. And so again, this time of year, it's about being as sharp as you can be. And so I think I want Joey to continue to try to keep getting sharper.
Really interesting matchup on paper as we were going into it. Scholes is a guy who's very dangerous from a lot of different positions.
Yeah.
And so, how much do you think that weighed on Joey and because Joey likes to get in there and scramble. He wants to create action. He likes to roll around, make us all nervous, get everybody sweating a little bit, and then come out on top. Yeah. And he looked a little hesitant to really get in there and engage.
Yeah, and I think some of it was the other guy, too. If you look at Scholes, the thumb block over the top, really working hard to create space. And again, I think that's a byproduct of people, knowing where Joey likes, Joey wants to see positions. He wants to get in there and he wants to wrestle hard, and scramble even, he wants to create. And I think, some of it was, hey, Joey, caught the stall call early, got the escape, was ahead, was never in danger. And then Scholes, too, didn't want to engage, in my opinion, as much until the very end. Now at the end, now he has to go, right? Because, he has no choice. And still didn't really go much. No. And so I think it was a combination of those two things, but I want to focus on our guy.
For sure.
Yeah, I want to we can't control how his opponents are going to do things. We want to focus on our mindset and our execution. So we'll do that. And like I said, I think Joey can even, admit that, hey, there's some spots where he could have been more aggressive and pushed, and executed in a little bit of a different way.
Third match that's really worth mentioning because it was a great match. 133 pounds. Our guy Blake Borman took on the defending national champion, number 1 ranked Lucas Bird. And in a little controversial fashion, ends up losing 5-4.
Yeah.
Take us through your thoughts kind of on that match and what you saw from Blake.
Yeah. Something occurred in that match you don't often see. Blake scored the only offensive takedown in the match and still lost. And so as you go back, I think, it's worth, and maybe people who really follow this, it's an interesting discussion about the rule, stalling, especially collegiately, where if somebody goes out of bounds, there has to be, one of 3 calls, right? It's the guy who backed out, with his back there stalling. The offensive guy maybe avoided action, just pushed him out. Maybe he's stalling, or there's an action call, right? People can go out of bounds in a good scramble or in the midst of an attack, and then, hey, it's just an action call, and we go back to center and continue wrestling. And I think tactically, Bird wound up with some good, strong ties, control ties, you would say, whether it was a collar tie or an underhook or both, and was able to really kind of control the mat and drive Blake through the zone and force, a number of stall calls, right? Certainly there was no attacks, in my opinion, going on. It was just him driving us through the zone and forcing restarts. And so to me,
I'm not sure he touched Blake's legs in the whole match.
No, I know, and that's the frustrating part here. Is we had 2 very good attacks where we had looks at scored on one of them, but you can say we let Bird control the ties and the mat, and that's on us. We have
absolutely.
to make. There's ownership here. You can't just look at the calls and throw it off there. However, I do think if you watch that mat, it wasn't like Bird was super offensive. And we were backing out on that end of the deal. I think we let him get into some control ties and control the mat in a way that we can't next time. But again, he's right there. Blake has wrestled a really tough schedule, a number of tough opponents in a row, and has continued to represent himself very well, where I think you can still see he feels in his mind he's gathering momentum. for the end of the year. And that's what you want this time.
Yeah.
You want to be gathering momentum despite wins and losses. You want to win, no doubt. I mean, it makes you feel better, but you want to be building momentum, and I still see that as part of, Blake's journey right now. As you can see him really kind of gathering excitement about what he's doing and what he's capable of.
The top end of 133 in the conference is, it's as strong as any weight you could say nationally. In the Big Ten, you've got probably 4 or 5 of the top 10 guys in the country.
Yep.
Within the conference, in addition to, a handful more in that 10 to 15 range. And so I know early in the season when we kind of looked ahead and we were looking at guys' individual schedules, there was some concern that, Blake was going to face, I forget what I think it was like 6 of the top 10 guys in the country in the preseason poll in 6 of his 8 Big Ten matches. Yep. And that was, that's intimidating to look at, and you worry about, where the mind goes, right? Mm-hmm. And so to see here we are now in February, and Blake, despite losing the last 2 matches, is in a position where mentally he's gaining momentum, and he's, he sees that he's right in there scrapping. I mean, he's one of 2 guys to take down Lucas Bird all season.
Yeah.
And so that positive mindset that he's got and the way he's building, I think a lot of guys could take something from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, like we talked, he's building momentum. He's taken a couple of tough losses, and most people would say, hey, how do you have momentum when you've dropped some matches? But it's about figuring things out that help you at the end of the year. It's about learning some things about both yourself, your technique, your match strategy or whatever, and I think he's doing that. And so he is finding ways like, hey, when he's at the end of the year, man, he's going to peak at the right time. He's going to have figured some things out after facing these guys earlier and have a good opportunity to reach some goals.
I kind of opened the door a little bit to this, but I think it's something that's worth talking about. And I know Corey's going to want to jump in on some of this. We use a company called Profile. Mm-hmm. Little background. Owned by a guy named Chad Brown, who's a Purdue alum, was part of our football program here. And Chad has gone on to develop this company, and it is a cross between a personality analysis and key motivators.
Behavioral assessment, I think, is what the way they would say it.
That's probably the way Chad would word it. But, we're in, year 3 or 4 of using it with our team. And I think right now, the point we are at the season where guys are winning and losing, and we're getting down to they're all tired, they're all beat up. It's been a long season, and so being able to address their mental makeup and guide them accordingly on a kind of on an individual basis becomes so important as we get towards the postseason. And so I kind of wanted to kind of dip our toe into this a little bit about how having that mental makeup of your guys helps you build towards the postseason.
Yeah, I think it's been particularly good for me, with especially with kind of my makeup. I am I'll get fired up. I can get very emotional, and I get driven in that way. But not everybody responds that way, right? Like as you mentioned, like you get down to the end of the year, and some guys, maybe even I think Chad said this to me last week when we were talking about guys, is some guys don't need a pep talk. They're not in the pep talk isn't going to do anything for them.
Right.
You got to connect the dots in just terms of technically, like this, and then this, right? You ain't got to worry about the motivational aspect. It's like connect the dots for this guy tactically, and that's where he needs to live and think. So I just think. You mentioned it, at a time of a year when you've been through the grind and there's been wins and losses, there can be lots of distractions in that. And so understanding how to connect with your guys is certainly important, and that's been good for us. It's certainly never perfect. I wouldn't tell you, but, I've come to value it and understand that it gives you great insight into maybe who people are, what they value, and maybe what motivates them. And that's a big deal when you're trying to be on the same page with young people.
I think a guy that makes a lot of sense to bring up, going back a few years, was Parker Filius, and how this helped him on his run to be an All-American in his senior year. And, it was right about this time of the season when we took a step back and we looked at what Parker was doing and how he was trending, and we made a drastic change in his training and like preparation for matches. And it was largely based on his profile assessment.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Like, the way he kind of processes information or the way that he handles it. The way I remember it, just to strip it down to maybe its simplest form is you can't give, you couldn't give him too much. Don't give him too much information. Like, strip it down to the one or two things that are really worth, that day focusing on and executing, and keep it that way with him. And that really, really worked well. Instead of giving him, 6, 7 things, it's like, here's the one or two. And that was it for the day. We're going to really focus on this area, and this is all. And certainly it worked out really well, because he was doing his absolute best wrestling, probably of his career, going into the last month of the season.
Watching you guys prepare that on a daily basis, as far as like finding what Parker's like one or two things were going to be, it was fascinating from an outsider's point of view, as far as watching the the training setup and the regimen and how that all was building. And how much has it helped having a success story like that as you continue to use profile and continue to build on it year by year?
Yeah, good for us. It reinforces belief, right? Like, when you make a change, that can be scary, right? Even, as we ask young people to make changes technically or whatever.
Especially for a strong D.
That's right. There you go. That change is scary for people, right? It's, you got to learn to trust change. And so now when we did this and it worked out, like, hey, it's easier to trust the next time you want to jump off that, that cliff and make a change with somebody who might be like, hey, this doesn't feel right. Hey, let's trust it. Let's try it. We think this can be good. I think it just helps build trust that, yes, we've seen it work. We know it will. And there's confidence. And again, trust is what you're after with all these guys. They got to learn to trust what you're telling them. Because if they don't trust or what you're asking them to do, they'll bail on it in the moment of truth, right? In that tough moment. And it's hard enough, to have success. We're talking about, Illinois was a tough duel that way, but it's a very stingy number 12th ranked team. They're not going to give you much.
No.
You gotta go earn it. You gotta go earn everything. And that's going to require absolute trust in the moment of what you got to execute.
Well, and it's interesting because trust is a metric that's buried in the 24-page report that we get. And so we actually have a good read on how much each of our 30 guys, is more inclined or less inclined to trust what you're saying at face value. And I think it gives you an added layer when you look to build in that plan for them going into a match, a duel, a tournament, whatever it is.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely invaluable. And then I'd say the other thing too that you look at is, you have some guys who, I talked earlier with, maybe it was when we were talking basketball. We were talking basketball about the game last night even, but sometimes you just
shout out to the Boilers, OT road win at Nebraska.
Good road
number
win.
7 Nebraska last night. Nice job, Coach Painter and the boys.
That's right. Good win. But we've got some guys and who, hey, if I win, I'm good. If I lose, I'm bad, right? You get caught in that scenario where you're just trying to win, and that's the absolute wrong mindset at the end of the year. Like, you want to always go back to, hey, was my effort great? Did I execute? And did I make good decisions? That's what I've talked so much this week about guys is like, we got to get out of this win good, lose bad, because then we're going to stun our growth here. And we got to have growth all the way to the end. And so you got to know your guy, how hard are you going to have to work here? Because, he just lost. Like, we had a number of guys just lose, and you still got to have these guys go back to, hey, was my effort good? Did I execute, and did I make good decisions? If I did those 3 things, or if I didn't, what didn't I do well? Now let's correct. So, and that all goes to profile, what you're saying. Like, that all plays a role as you're kind of parsing those things out with guys.
Corey, I know you got lots of thoughts on this. I wanted you to be able to have a chance to jump in with a statement or a question.
Yeah, real quick, just on what you were just saying, Tony. Coach Painter was on the For Pete's Sake podcast this week, and he was talking about how people get mad, people get focused on the win-loss thing. They don't understand. We're working on the same thing in practice, win or lose. We're still trying to get that little bit better at this handful of things. No matter what the score says at the end of the game, we're going to be working on the same things tomorrow.
Yep.
And so that's fascinating to hear it from your perspective.
We're probably going to shoot free throws tomorrow, whether we made them or missed them in this game.
Probably shooting them already today. So Tanner said 24-page report. You have 30 guys on the team.
Yeah.
How do you pick through? It's the volume of information at your fingertips now.
Yep.
How do you decide what's important?
I think there's a couple of things in there that I value. Like you said, there's 24 pages, and it would be easy to just get lost and go down a rabbit hole. And admittedly, I don't understand it well enough yet to want to be able to look at it as a whole and make judgments. So obviously, Chad's great. His people are great. So you rely on kind of some of their insights there as well. But we have got some, I don't know, metrics, I guess, that you would say that I value more, that I think are just important. Like the one that Tanner knows I value too is there's kind of resilience. And I just think you're an athlete, and there are wins and there are losses. So being resilient, being able to get smacked in the mouth and still move forward is a huge thing for me. So there's things like resilience that you look at.
Temperance is another one that's connected to that.
Yeah. So there are, without naming every one, there are a handful of ones that we do value. And when you look at it, you're like, hey, maybe this could be a really good fit for us. And I will tell you this, though. This ain't a right or wrong.
No.
This is just people. I always want to be clear with that, because as recruits look at this, I don't want them to feel like that. If there's a category here, that's a black mark against you. That's not what this is. This is simply a way we can be on the same page and know who our guys are. When you're talking 5 years, 4 to 5 years with a young person, you want to know who they are, and sometimes it takes years to get to that point. It takes years of working with them to know how they exactly respond. And so this gives you a head start on who they are, what they value, what motivates them. And so I think it helps you connect quicker. Again, there's not like good or bad, right or wrong here. This is like, hey, this is who this young person is, and how we can maybe get on the same page more quickly.
And the other thing I think is fascinating, sorry, T.
No, you're good.
You're dealing with, if you're talking about recruits, you're dealing with 15, 16, 17-year-olds, probably 16, 17-year-olds, who don't really understand who maybe they are yet. But these kinds of things are giving metric values to things that they might not even know they hold, or that they hold really dearly and importantly to themselves. Yeah.
I'll give you a good story, obviously without giving names, but this made an impression on me. There was a young man, and he was super high in the category. I think it was generous. You know what I mean? And he was like, I don't think I'm generous at all. I don't see that, coach. I don't know what they're talking about. This is interesting. And didn't say anything else about it, right? Because we were just looking at it. Here's, hey, this is kind of who you are. And I said, hey, you're really high here. Why do you think you're really high? Just asking him. I want to know. And he goes, I don't think that's me, coach. I don't see it. And sure enough, okay, we're done. He goes home, and a couple days later, we're on the phone, and we're talking about stuff. You got any questions? You're on your visit, blah, blah, blah. He goes, I asked all of my friends, I was high in generosity, and is that me, you guys? And he said, all of his buddies said, yeah, that's absolutely you. I mean, like, if I needed something from you, you'd be there to help me out. They all considered that generous. And he didn't see that or notice that in himself, but all of his buddies to a T said, no, I have no doubt if I needed something, you'd be there. Yeah, it's generous. So, again, right, maybe you don't always see it in yourself, but maybe it's how other people may recognize you. I found that fascinating.
And I think one of the things, Corey, you asked about, getting lost in the 24 pages. Mm-hmm. And I think, kind of to add on to what Tony was saying, as far as, different parts of the report are more and less important to certain individuals. And so as we read them, as we get to know the kids, as we find out what their hot buttons are, in regards to whether it's motivating them or, winding them up for a match, or, how do we educate them better, train them better, calm them down better, whatever it is, there's different parts of that report that play more or less into each kid. And it's like Tony said, we rely on Chad and his staff to kind of help us find those things. But it's always a tool to be able to go back to as we, if a certain kid is riding really high and doing really well, and we're looking into what has gotten them there and what's, how to keep them there. You know what I mean? Maybe we find something in there. Obviously the other end of it, a kid's doing not so well. How do we pull them out of their funk? How do we get them back on the horse and get going again? And so I think it's, yes, you could absolutely go down the rabbit hole and get lost in just reading. But I think it's all situational. Mm-hmm. And we're able to use it as just, it's another tool in the toolbox that we're able to pull out and find depth in kids that, you may not be able to find otherwise.
Yeah.
Yep. No, it's been good for us. It's fairly new. Like you said, it's like 3 years in.
Yeah, we're not that far down into it yet, but we're I know Coach Painter has been with Chad for a long time, and they've used it with the basketball program.
Yep. Nope.
And he's done stuff with the NFL and various college basketball and football teams all over the country and different now they're
businesses.
Businesses. Corporate. They're going more into corporate now, and so it's a really fascinating tool. So we're very lucky to have access to it and to Chad and his team. So
yep.
Shout out to our friends at Profile.
Hold on.
Keep going.
Quick question.
Hit me.
Next time you're with Chad, my man's middle initial is Q.
Yes, true story.
What's his middle name?
Don't know.
Got to find that out.
I wouldn't even want to offer a guess.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chad.
No.
Hey, next time I talk to him, I got another question.
Sorry.
Okay.
My daughter and his daughter played basketball together a while back.
Was that right?
Yeah. They're great people.
Okay.
Fantastic. He's got a great haircut, and he likes sneakers. So I mean,
nice and shiny haircut.
Yeah, I was just saying, I got lots of good things to say about the guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving ahead to this week, obviously duel with there's layers to this weekend, right? Sunday 1 p.m. we're going to host Tony's alma mater, the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Yep.
Always a special day for you to get to compete against them, and
Yep.
Tom and Terry Brands are two of your former college coaches, and people you've known a long time, and so that's always it's always one that's marked on the calendar for you.
No, absolutely. You got to be ready, and you got to be ready to wrestle hard. So and last home duel of the year as well. So
yep.
Yeah, it's definitely one that you want to be ready for, and be at your best.
You mentioned last home duel of the year. We're going to honor our 8 seniors, guys that are going to, that are wrapping up their time with the program. And obviously there's not enough time, in the day to recognize everything they've brought to the program. But, we'll do our best in the 15 to 20 minutes before the duel starts to honor their contribution. Tell me about this group and what they've done and what they've brought to Purdue.
Yeah, they've been a part of some special things. And again, the way I always look at this, right, it takes everybody. My phrase is always, hey, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you got to go together. And our goals have always been to go far, you know what I mean? And so we want to go together. And I feel like they are responsible for everything that this group has done. And if you look at, there's been some really special things. Guys in the national championship finals, some strong team finishes, some great dual wins. There's been a lot that this group has done over the last 4 and 5 years, and they've been a part of it, whether they were in the lineup at the time or not. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. They're in there either working to be the guy and representing Purdue wearing, one of the 10 wearing the singlet for that meet, or they were trying to make somebody better. And I appreciate what that takes. It takes a lot of effort. I still don't know if any people generally understand just how hard it is as a college athlete these days. From the amount of time that you spend at your sport to now you're on your school, you're cutting weight. There's just a lot going on for young people, right? And we've talked about that at length as well. So, it's hard.
Yes.
And I got a healthy respect for anybody who stays committed and spends their time with us and what we're asking them to do.
100%. I think if I had to pick one word to kind of talk about this group and what they've done for Purdue and what their legacy will be, I think that word for me would be culture. I think these guys have bought into what we've done wholeheartedly and put their heads down, and they have continued to help us bring in guys that fit that culture and stick with us through the good and the bad, and are unbelievably proud to wear that P on their chest.
Yeah. It's how tight they generally are, right? I mean, is been fun to see, again, in this kind of environment this days, where sometimes it's easier when you're going through hard or you're not the guy just to pick up and leave, right? And they have stuck together and supported each other. So that's that word you use, culture, right? I mean, they're a tight group, and they support each other pretty well, generally. So that part does make you proud too. I mean, not only have they accomplished a lot, some of the things, like I said, from some really good dual meet wins to tournament places, or helping their teammates with significant wins and reach national championship finals. They've done a number of things they can and should be proud of. And then the other thing is, there's things just by having undergone this, doing hard as a collegiate athlete, that maybe you didn't get everything you wanted, right now, but that's going to help you. It might be your next job interview. It might be years down the road when you're running your own company. Sometimes you don't know when that shows up and it has the impact that you want or that you need. It's just, we don't always get it when we want it, but it inevitably tends to show up with these guys. And that's the thing. When they leave, you feel pretty good about, like, hey, they'll be ready to do well in their next stage.
Corey, you've watched these guys wrestle a boatload of matches over the last 4 or 5 years. As a fan and a bit of an outside observer, what have you taken away from this group of seniors and everything they've done on and off the mat?
I think it's been really cool on the mat. You've got a group here who they've done whatever it takes to help the program, done whatever it takes to help the team. The big guys, Venadia, Filipovic, they've both been asked to fill a lot of roles in their time here. Phil's been asked to put on a bunch of weight, which, I did along with him. Moral support for the guy.
Moral support for the 84-pounder gone heavyweight. There you go.
60 pounds later, right?
Stoney did the opposite.
Yeah.
Need you to go down because it makes us stronger, and I know that's been...
Ike Rubel's been all over the place.
Ike's been all over the place.
Yes.
Ike is one of my all-time favorite people.
Yeah.
He's such a sweet kid. He's so kind. He's awesome to be around.
He's a happy guy.
He is. Happy dude. And filling a bunch of roles. It's been a group that's like, we're going to do what is needed to be done. And that's what you need. Like Tanner said, culture, that feeds into the culture that you've built, Tony. And I think it's been a lot of fun watching this group mature, have success, and become the men that they are.
Ike is such a fun story, and a kid that, wrestled 120 pounds his senior year of high school. Spent some years at 113, and we thought we were bringing in a guy at 133 pounds.
I know, right? Was he a 126-pounder when he graduated?
No, I think he wrestled 120 at the state finals.
Was that it? It was 120 or 126, and then he just blew right past that. Yeah,
he showed up.
Man,
wait a minute.
You talk about a guy. I mean, and he grew this way. He got big in the weight room, and he's wrestled as high as 165 pounds for us this season. And so you see these guys as they I think that's one of the harder parts about recruiting college wrestling. Is basketball. Guy gets taller or bigger, you're like, okay, cool. You're still playing basketball. If you're in football, maybe you move a tight end to the offensive line, or you move, a linebacker to a defensive end, or whatever it is. If these guys grow, it's not like if you recruit a 125 pounder and he's a 157 pounder, you got a bit of a problem.
Yeah, it is. It creates some unique problems, and especially now with a roster cap of 30, it's going to only get tougher as soon as you got to recruit these kids earlier and earlier, and still project where they're at. So
you're not able to cut a limb off and just send them back down to the weight class you wanted them at.
No,
their bodies change, and especially as we recruit them younger.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They open the door to juniors, and these kids are 15, 16 years old sometimes, and you don't know what they're going to do.
No, you just never know. And
we thought Joey Blaze was a 149-pounder.
He was not.
Blew past that.
Yeah, he was gone. Yeah.
Yeah, there was that lasted about a week once he got here.
Yeah, that's the truth. But that's part of the fun too, right? Like watching the growth and the changes, and watching them have opportunities, and have success and sometimes disappointment, right? But it's all growth, right? Then it all shows up again later, whether it's in your wrestling career or down the road. I mean, you still think about kids like Jacob McAtange and Cade Law. I know, like, those guys have both been in our lineup at times off and on and had opportunities, right? And so they've all had a part in this.
For sure.
They have all had a part. And that's all I want them to know. Because, again, there's disappointment. Some guys, we didn't all get what we wanted, in our college career.
For sure.
I would count myself in that group, right? Like, so, but you understand, like, the commitment and the work that it takes, and there's a lot of respect in that. And that's what I care about, is there's a lot of respect in knowing what they've had to do and what they've had to sacrifice and how hard they've had to work. And then, right, you rest good knowing, like, hey, it's done a lot for them, and they'll be good next stage.
Want to continue our appreciation of the seniors with a massive appreciation for their parents. Mm-hmm. This is a group that all of their parents, we've gotten to spend a ton of time with these families over the last 4 or 5 years, and they have traveled all over the country to come watch their kids and support our team. And we would be remiss if we didn't extend a huge thank you to the 8 sets of parents that will be on the mat with their kids come Sunday.
Yeah, with everything we've asked them to do, as I just have talked about extensively, you got to have support. You know what I mean? And certainly, obviously, there's the mom and dad are there to help support and pick them up, through the good and the bad as well. So yeah, it takes everybody, and so it wouldn't have got done without like kind of their help and support.
For our fan base, please, please, please arrive early on Sunday to help us honor these 8 seniors and their families for everything they've given to the Boilermakers. The senior ceremony will probably start somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes before the start of the duel. Yep. So plan accordingly, be there early, and help us send these guys out in the best way possible. The duel, like we alluded to earlier, going to be another tough one. Iowa's always an excellent program, and there are a number of really good matchups on the slate that we'll be looking forward to. I think we've talked a little bit about Blake Borman. He's going to have another really
last week
good
he had
guy.
The national champ. Now this week you get the national runner-up.
Right.
There you go.
I think he's wrestled an All-American in like 5 straight weeks or something like that.
And that's welcome.
It's wild.
Welcome to the Big Ten, where you're going to be tested, and hey, I'm excited about that.
For sure.
And I said the best thing is I think Blake's excited about that. You know what I mean? Like that's what you have no choice. This is what we are. This is where we compete, and we get excited about that. So looking forward to strapping it on Sunday afternoon.
165 pounds, another really stiff test for our guy Joey Blaze. Mm-hmm. He's going to have the 2-time national runner-up Michael Caliendo from Iowa, and should be a fantastic matchup between 2 great wrestlers.
Yeah, guys who both like to be aggressive and, again, see a lot of positions. So the potential to see points in action in this match is high, in my opinion.
The funny part is we talked about it the other day. When it comes to Big Ten seeding considerations, it actually doesn't have a lot on the table for either guy.
Well, since I think Caliendo only has the loss to Messenbrink. So as it stands now, and certainly there's duels after this week that could have impact. But as it stands now, you're looking at those 2 would be the 2 and the 3 seed. You know what I mean? That's like I don't want to put any, hay in the barn before it's done, I guess. But that's the potential. 2 or 3 isn't really that impactful on a bracket, but still, to see each other, and kind of have opportunities to kind of get ready for bigger things down the road is big.
I want to take a second for everybody to appreciate how uncomfortable I just made Ersland, because he hates playing with numbers, and he hates playing with seeds and all the projections and whatnot. But you handled that really well. I knew you were uncomfortable talking about it, but I don't know if everybody else did.
Yeah, who knows? Did I cover well? Like I said, at the end of the day, it just does not matter.
You got to wrestle, right?
We got to go wrestle.
You got to go wrestle.
We got to go wrestle.
But it's it was one of the ones that I know our guy Earl Smith over at Intermat did a thing a few weeks ago about the undefeated wrestlers and who was on their schedule left and so on and so forth. And so this was a big one that was earmarked for both Caliendo and Joey Blaze as we get down the stretch and get closer and closer to the Big Ten championships and the NCAA championships.
Yeah, 2 great competitors. Both possess great offensive potential. Yeah, it should be fun. You want everybody to show up and let it go.
So that's probably about it for this week's show, Corey. Unless you got anything else. I know we were supposed to talk about the Oscars this week, but I think we're out of time at this point.
This was better. One thing I do need to point out, it doesn't mean anything probably. Tony, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but when healthy, I just realized, because I'm slow, when healthy, your roster is brought to you by the letter B. Did you realize that? Half of your starters
have the
last name starting with the letter B.
I actually was aware of this because when I do travel parties and flight logs and stuff like that.
Bowman, Buell, Blaze, Brown. Yeah.
Man, if you're out there, a prospective wrestler, and your last name starts with B, things are in your favor. That's all I'm saying.
I think we can get the guys to
I hadn't thought of it. Welcome to Random Facts.
We can get the guys to guest appear on Sesame Street or something like that. Pro Wrestling brought to you by the letter B.
Have Elmo do that?
Yeah.
That's all I got this week.
Dynamite drop in, Corey.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Thanks to everybody out there who joined us this week for the Always Aggressive podcast. I'm your host, Tanner Lipsett, signing off. Boiler up.
Boilermaker faithful here in Holloway Gym giving Ben Benadia a round of applause. He picks up his 4th Big Ten Dual victory of the season.